Hello and welcome to the debate. My name is Naila Shuja. And now tonight we are diving into the shocking yet historic development that has captured global attention. Donald Trump's triumphant return as president-elect of the United States of America's election cycle 2024. Now, in a stunning comeback, Trump has once again defied the odds, securing the 270 electoral votes needed to reclaim the White House. Now, with promises of ushering in a golden age and leading what he calls the greatest political movement of all time, Trump's victory marks a pivotal moment not just for America, but the world. And that's what we're going to be looking at today. So from the allies like Israel hailing his return as a new chapter in their partnership to regional players in the Middle East are preparing for a reset in the U.S. policy, the global reactions are pouring in. Our Prime Minister, Mr. Shehbaz Sharif, along with various other senior leaders from across the political party spectrum, have congratulated President-elect Donald Trump and are looking forward. Right? But what does this mean for the future of international diplomacy, and how will Trump's leadership reshape the global dynamics? We're going to be breaking that down today. We're also going to be speaking about the Lahore's worsening smog crisis that's happening in the city of Lahore and its surrounding areas. And we're also going to be taking a look at the various anti-smog operations where 7 people have been arrested and registering 19 cases, finding 382 people in the past 24 hours. Now, again, there is going to be a 50% of the public and private sector's offices which are going to be working from home in order to manage themselves because of the smog. And there is a green lockdown that has been implemented in the vicinity of Lahore and the surrounding areas. Now, coming back to our initial topic, which is Trump and his re-election and the world politics. We are joined by our 2 guests on Skype, Dr. Niaz Murtaza, who is a political analyst, and Jiyar Baloch, former ambassador, along with our 2 senior analysts here in the studio, Farooq Patafi and Raja Faisal, who are here. And it's going to be a very interesting conversation because, as we know, the elections have happened. Now, understanding the fundamentals of, as I've said before, the future of international diplomacy and how will Trump's leadership reshape global dynamics. But I want to come to you. I want to have you explain to us what this actually means for the international domain and what the implications will be for the diplomatic arena as well.
Right, Naila, thank you very much for the question. First of all, because we are talking about the policy impact, first of all, one has to actually look at 2 conflicts that are going on, and they seem to be dividing our world. The first one is Israel-Gaza, and not only Gaza now it has spread to Lebanon and also to Iran. So here's a new story that might actually interest you. Israeli publication Maariv is reporting that Trump and Netanyahu spoke, and Trump has given Netanyahu the green light that he can do whatever he wants with Iran and do what Israel needs in Gaza and Lebanon. So to sum it up, finish the job the way you like. This is one thing that is going to happen, and of course we have been discussing that for quite some time. The other story, and that is going to be quite interesting because that is dependent on how Congress shapes up. We know that there's a war going on in Ukraine as well. So the first thing that I was told, and I contacted some of my friends in Trump's orbit, and they said that on day 1 or day 2, you can expect that there is going to be at least some relaxation in the sanctions on Russia, especially if the House, by the way, House hasn't been called yet. They say that the total number is going to be 217 versus 211, Democrats 211. So the control is going to be with the Republicans, but still the majority is very tight. We still are waiting for 2 seats that have to be decided in California. After that, we'll know where does the House stand. But Senate is totally in the thrall of the Republican Party now. So they will have very little problem in easing some of the sanctions on Russia, especially if you remember yesterday I spoke about the SWIFT system, out of which Russia was expelled So you can expect that Russia is going to come back, and it will be part of that. Apart from that, of course, when it comes to Ukraine, you can safely bet that the aid packages that have been going on to the tune of billions, they are now going to dry up, and we are just going to see what exactly that is going to hold. Now the UN, amazingly, the UN is a place that its headquarters is in the US, and in the city from which Donald Trump actually hails. So there's going to be a very interesting kind of tug of war as well. Last time, Donald Trump actually kept on arguing to boot, UN building from the US, particularly New York, because he's a builder, he's a property dealer. So he believes that it is taking up a lot of potential space from there. So I don't know how exactly UN is going to, transpire, but there's going to be less emphasis on multilateralism, and there's going to be more on bilateralism. Regarding China, on China, of course, the former president and president-elect had actually started with the trade war. Now, what we expect is that he's going to use all the levers to go for, if you remember, during his first time, he had actually marshaled out the first phase of FTA, Free Trade Agreement with China. So this time there's going to be final conclusion. Of course, he is going to leverage whatever he has got, but global economy also is going to be interesting because as we speak, Powell, who is the head of US Fed, is going to cut interest rates further. We still have to see how that translates into inflation, but it is going to be quite interesting.
Absolutely, a very interesting perspective on this. Now, a very warm welcome to our guests who are joining us online, Dr. Niaz Murtaza, who is a political analyst, and Jr. Baloch, a former ambassador. Thank you so much for taking the time out and joining us on the debate. A very, very warm welcome. And now, just diving right into the conversation, Jr. Baloch, what's your take on the fact that Trump's criticism of NATO and multilateral institutions such as the United Nations basically suggests that his second term could weaken these alliances? Now, that being said, do you see Trump's presidency truly impacting the international politics, particularly with regard to multilateral agreements such as NATO and the Paris Climate Agreement?
Naila, basically, Trump's coming for the second time as the president of the US is indeed a very historically very important, not only for the US, its government, its people, but for the globe, because America has been, since the Second World War, up to the end of it, has been playing a very dominant role in the globally. It has footprints almost all over the world, and being a biggest economy, being one of the major producers of weapons, technology center, having the UN, having premier university. So I think it is kind of a fulcrum of the today's world, if you will. That being the case, now we have a gentleman, Mr. Donald Trump, who believes some kind of a innovation of his own. So his style, not only if we are talking about the foreign policy, we won't go to what he do with his domestic policy, that he not only kind of is different in style, but in content. His worldview is entirely different. And in fact, if I say so, that he has some kind of a disruptive approach towards his domestic policies as well as international order or the global order. He does not believe in the status quo or the traditional way the world works and the kind of role that the US over the years has played. And he wants to set his own rules. And literally, he is proving himself to be an outsider. Actually, that was a refrain used by his detractors. But he has been proven, he's proving himself outsider in terms of thinking outside the system as such. He, in his first term, he's taken like kind of uh, was confronting his bureaucracy, his established establishment, and and having his own way wherever he could. But I think let's concentrate our discussion on some major issues. That if we look at it, what will he do with NATO? I think that's the biggest question. And NATO is a platform on which the U.S. military dominance, and as such, it kind of determines uh, and puts its weight around it. If NATO is really diluted, and if the Europeans feel that now US is no more uh, that committed to NATO, I think they'll start having their own defense. And as a consequence, you'll have dilution of NATO as an organization, as a military alliance. Then another bigger question is, of course, China, as to because uh, US being the dominant power and China being the emerging dominant power, as even dominant economy militarily as well as is kind of catching up with the US. So I think we saw a very warm message by the Chinese president to him, but he has his own worldview and his own view of China. And if he really uh, goes on his what he's saying that I'll put sanctions, and he says that the most beautiful word in the dictionary is the trade tariffs. If that be the mindset, so we could imagine that how he would disrupt again the global supply chain. He could disrupt the entire kind of world global economy by his own like whatever he believes is the correct way to go about. Now, since he has his gut feeling, his instincts, he now says that are correct after having been chosen as a second time, elected as a second time president. So I think there'll be a very big disruption. In the Middle East, obviously, there's a big question whether his unwavering support to Israel will continue. If that be the case, will he allow Netanyahu to go ahead with his pending file of attacking Iran? Because it appears that probably that action was kept pending till the elections are over. Since the elections are over, should we expect, I hope not, but should it be that they, because you know his words are very strong. He said, I wanted Netanyahu to have his victory fast. If that is what he wants, that's a very dangerous signal from his point from the point of view of threats that the Middle East faces at the hands of this war-mongering Netanyahu and his regime. So we'll have to see that. As far as the Ukraine is concerned, I think it is easier said than done by him that I'll finish the war in 2 days or one day. Hundreds of thousands of people have been killed and maimed. There is a whole sovereignty of a state at stake. And the other side is the well-entrenched position of Russia. So I think it'll take him time to get his again his agenda implemented. Nonetheless, this time around, he is very well served. He already has a blueprint as to how he will implement his ideas, his instincts, and his worldview. So I think we will see a lot of disruption domestically as well as internationally under Trump too.
That's a very
Yeah.
interesting take. Absolutely, that's a very interesting take. Now, Dr. Murtaza, I'd like to switch it over to you and basically I have your opinion on the same matter. What is your opinion?
Well, basically, Trump is a domestic president. His first priority is domestic issues, and he has a very clear agenda for, a vast range of domestic issues, whether it's immigration, whether it's economy, whether it's social issues. So that will be his priority. But then, given the fact that he's the president of the United States of America, which has stakes all over the globe, he will have to, give some attention to the global affairs as well. Now, I mean, he's come in at a time when the global economy is starting to recover from, the impact and the aftermath of COVID-19, interest rates are starting to fall down, inflation is going down, and growth has restarted. So the first thing is, how his policies will impact this recovery of the global economy, and especially his, desire to slap tariffs on Chinese goods, especially thoughtlessly, without, fully understanding the implications of such tariffs on the domestic US economy. Because if supply chains are disrupted, then that will increase inflation within the US, which will mean that, interest rates will have to rise again. And then, of course, the global economy will get badly impacted, trade will reduce, the flow of investments will be disrupted, the flow of foreign aid will be disrupted. So that is the situation. A precarious economic recovery might get halted. Then, in terms of world politics, there are several emergency issues that he would have to deal with. There's this war going on in Europe, which is, of course, a key area for the US. And then there is the war in Ukraine, I mean. And then, there is the Middle East situation. And then I think the third issue would be for him would be, what to do with China. So again, he has a very impulsive approach. He doesn't, think through things. He doesn't even listen to advisors, which can give him, good advice. He will surround himself with, people like him, people like Elon Musk, people like Robert F. Kennedy, who will give him the wrong advice. And then, even if there are some sane voices around the table, he will discount their advice. So it's going to be, introduce a lot of unpredictability in global affairs, both economy as well as politics. And obviously, multilateralism will take a hit. There might be, a more focus on bilateralism, but, the main thing will be unilateralism. USA deciding on a few things and then just telling the rest of the world this is how it's going to be. So obviously, that will create tensions in a lot of relationships with Europe, with Canada, with Mexico, with Latin American countries, even with Middle Eastern countries and some of its Asian traditional allies like South Korea and so on. So obviously we are headed towards a much more volatile environment, a world which had just recovered from a huge amount of political and economic volatility might get pushed back towards that. And in some ways, he will have more scope to implement his kind of policies, because he'll have Senate control, most probably have House control. But then, of course, there is the fact that, on issue to issue, these majorities in Congress could change, because, the Senate majority would be, one or two seats, and there'll always be a few moderate Republicans, people like Susan Collins and so on, who may not go with him on every issue. Same with the House. We had seen even now what a fractured coalition the Republican, membership was. They, kicked out two or three speakers in the recent years. So there will be some opposition, even from within his own parties, to some of his more extremist, policies. So all in all, it's going to be very interesting times and very
Right.
turbulent times.
Absolutely. Now, Faisal, I couldn't help but notice, but you were smiling during, pardon me, during Mr. Ambassador's conversation and while he was addressing us. So basically, what I'm trying to understand is his focus on reducing the U.S. contributions to the global security initiatives are basically forcing other nations to reassess their defense and diplomatic strategies, and possibly, potentially, creating a power vacuum. What could you add to this? Do you agree? Do you disagree? What's your take on this?
Yeah, but Naila, it's a very good question. And, if we look at, of course, Donald Trump of 47th term, it will be very different from 45th, Why I say this? Because he himself has said, after 2 of the assassination attempts on him, he has said, maybe God has saved me for something big, and he is coming bigly, and he is going to, of course, do something big for the world. And I'm quite optimist when it comes to things the way they have been moving before, and now when he gets into the Oval Office, how he would deal with this. I mean, I'm thinking very positive about it. Why I say this? Because if we take the example of last 4 years of Joe Biden, what had happened? It started with what? It started with the COVID, and suddenly when we saw that there was a Ukraine crisis, the first major casualty of Ukraine crisis was COVID itself. Nobody talked about it anymore. I mean, everybody stopped talking about it, and it was like all of a sudden whatever the mess was created, it was all gone, and everyone started talking about the Ukraine crisis. And then Ukraine crisis, why I'm highlighting this? Because with the perspective of in last 4 years, what we saw, the rich became richer and the poor was simply doomed. Why I say this? Because the 2 major countries, the grain producing countries, Russia and Ukraine, they went into war, and these were the 2 countries that were actually providing grain to the African countries and countries like ours as well, with the massive populations, and with obviously every now and often we need grain, and that is where we actually import from. And all of these countries, they started suffering, and the economies of these countries, they started suffering as well. Same is the case with our own economy. Pakistan's economy was in dire situations, and that is why we saw that very harsh decisions, they were to be made by the government to sustain all of the pressures, the international pressures I'm talking about. So what happened later on? If we take the example of countries like the European countries, if you ask any household in the Europe, they will tell you what were they paying in the energy bills before the Ukraine crisis and what are they paying now. So rich has become richer, poor are simply doomed. And here it is, we are seeing in the Oval Office coming back, the second coming, the 47th president of the US. The number 47th is coming into the office, the Oval Office, and he has a plan. He believes that if a Yalta conference can take place in 1945, in which Roosevelt and Stalin and Churchill, they can sit together and they can design a way forward, including the United Nations. This is where they actually dealt with. And don't forget, Yalta conference took place in Crimea itself, and Crimea is the center point of the Ukraine crisis. And why not? Why not? We might see Trump extending a hand towards Putin, and both of them, they meet at Yalta once more to decide about the future of the world, because this war is of course affecting the whole world, and of course Europe is getting affected by it as well. And I'm already getting the indications in which I believe, as we know, that Russians, they have covered all of the coastal line of Ukraine. They might not give up the whole coastline to secure Crimea. They might not give up the whole coastline, but at least Odessa, they might say, yeah, Ukraine can keep it, but we are not going to give Mariupol, we are not going to give the Donbas area. And Donbas area has already been declared as part of Russia by the Russian lawmakers. So it is a point where they might sit down and restore peace in the region, and we have been getting the vibes of Ukraine becoming part of EU, if not the whole Ukraine, but after the war, whatever the Ukraine is left with, that might become part of EU for the future sustainability of the region. And I believe this is going to be the solution for Ukrainian crisis. When it comes to Middle Eastern crisis, I would differ from Farooq. He has actually pointed out earlier that one of the newspaper from Israel, it has claimed that a green light has been shown to Israel to do whatever they want. No, this is not going to be the case. I am looking a very different Trump this time around. He might include forces or peace forces from his own country or some other country to restore peace in Gaza. And peace is what he has been chanting about just before the election. If you take 2 days before election, the statement he came up with, he highlighted the word peace and he said he will restore the peace, and peace is what is required. If Netanyahu doesn't go along with it, then I am seeing Benny Gantz coming into the frame, where Benny Gantz would take the center stage from Israel, because Benny Gantz has the capabilities of course, leaning towards any other options rather than the ultimate option of annihilation. And I believe Trump is not going to allow any annihilation or any destruction, further destruction of Gaza. And he is going to restore peace, because he very well knows that 73% of the Muslims from US, they have voted for this man only for one reason: to restore peace in Middle East, because heart of the whole Muslim world, it actually beats with the people of Gaza, and that is what is ultimately required. In the next speech, I'll talk about the Chinese side, but so far, I'm okay with it.
You're done with your current masala.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Farooq, I know you're itching to add something. I just know it.
Not at all.
Jia Baloch, I think.
right.
Ambassador Baloch,
he's welcome to actually add. I just wanted to ask, what is he disagreeing with me for? Because I just quoted a newspaper. It wasn't my opinion, right?
Yeah.
Ambassador Saab, with your permission, if I can actually start, or you can if you want to. Ambassador Saab. I can't see him actually. Okay, I'm
Yeah,
just
of course,
going to
of
take
course.
off. Look, until the election was going on, we had to actually roots for one side, and of course on the other side you keep on describing the faults or flaws. But there are certain things that you have to appreciate about Donald Trump, even while he was in power the first time. If you remember that the kind of Twitter exchanges he had with North Korea's leader, nuclear buttons picture, right? And he said that I have even a bigger nuclear button, and it is beautiful also. So that kind of, Nixon was known for a doctrine called madman doctrine, right? That you cannot predict what exactly is a president going to do. And because of that, many people kept on guessing, and that's why Nixon had certain breakthroughs. Donald Trump also deployed that, but on acid. I mean, it was multiplied manifold. So he has been using that. But this bit about Netanyahu, I think, honestly, the moment you think that he is going to do something of the sort, kindly wake me up, because I don't think there is going to be any substantive or substantial change regarding Trump's approach to Netanyahu. In fact, what is going to happen domestically, I think all the cases in which Donald Trump was indicted, they are going to go away. So on one side, if that is going to happen, on the other side, Netanyahu has also been struggling with cases on his person, and I think that gradually, I think that is going to be removed as well very quickly. So what you'll see is emboldened and strengthened Benjamin Netanyahu or Bibi Netanyahu. When it comes to Benny Gantz, I don't know why anybody would think that he is going to do anything different. The guy has been a tragic hero. He was part of an alliance, and then all of a sudden, the moment he got an opportunity, he joined coalition with Netanyahu. So there's no hope there. Gallant was somebody who was removed 2 days ago, a defense minister of Netanyahu, who was someone smart, but he has also been removed. So I don't think there's any correction in the system. I think Netanyahu will go ahead, continue his brutality, and it will continue till the time certain things happen or some targets are achieved, and I'm talking about domestic targets. That is settling of cases against him. The moment that happens, he's gradually going to relieve the pressure from other countries, and eventually there's going to be Abraham's Accords and part 2, and that will continue. Regarding other countries also, the UN as well, and similar things, I think Donald Trump is a very smart man. And regarding economy, it was said that economy perhaps is going to be in shabby condition. I remember when he was in power last time, he managed to bring down the prices of crude dramatically, and that was by playing two very important oil producing countries, Russia and Saudi Arabia, against each other. And because of that, the crude was almost free for a bit. And then he is going to go for shale gas also, fracking, so it is called. So with that kind of a thing, I think economy is going to be okay. His understanding of global economics is okay as well. Regarding tariffs versus taxes, I think eventually he is going to land somewhere in between. But what frightens me, Naila, and that is the age that we are living in. We are living in an age where everything is about to transform totally. And I don't mean politically. The first thing is AI. AI is very quickly displacing people from their jobs. That is one aspect which is very important. The second one is biotechnology advances also, genetic engineering. And the third one is climate change. So from Paris Accords, he had withdrawn America first. Once again, he is going to do similar thing. Regarding AI and biotechnology, there's this concern that in the recently Datnan Acemoglu and Johnson, the two Nobel laureates who got economics Nobel Prize, they wrote a book called Power and Progress. And the argument was that whenever there is a transition in the economy or technology, at that time unions play a very important role. But now, because Donald Trump has come in, because Elon Musk, who is known to be a union buster, who is going to be aligned with him, immediately what happens? Who decides which job is going to stay and which is going to go? It is going to be Elon Musk and all the Silicon Valley tycoons, so to speak. Absolutely. So with that kind of conditions, I don't think that the world is going to be a comfortable place, because all of a sudden this can happen, that you wake up and 40%, 50% jobs are gone and they have been taken by technology. Go ahead.
Absolutely. So I'm just going to come back to Netanyahu for a second. And basically the concerns and felicitations and the U.S.-Israel relationship, the ongoing Iran tensions, that's something I want to focus on right now, because Israel Prime Minister Netanyahu dialed Donald Trump on Wednesday after the Republicans stunning a U.S. election victory and discussed the, quotation, Iranian threat, end quotation, to Israel's security. And the conversation between both of them was warm and cordial. The discussion on Iran, how is the perception going to be viewed on the security situation between Israel and Iran conflict in the greater perspective?
Ambassador Baloch.
Yes, absolutely, Ambassador Baloch. Sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, I think for me, sitting in Pakistan, when I was looking at the results, I was thinking, what is that should engage our mind and minds of our thinkers as well as policymakers. That is the dynamics between Iran and Israel, and of course Iran with that extended to the US. Because what will happen is that will set the new dynamics. If the old Trump, which
Ambassador Baloch, we're having a difficult time hearing you. Would you mind taking off the hands-free device?
Okay, I'll try. Can you hear me now?
Yes, absolutely. So much better.
Can you
Wonderful.
hear me? Okay.
Please continue.
So what I'm saying that the biggest, I think, challenge would be this ongoing massacre of people. If he continues to really implement what he said, that Netanyahu must achieve his quick victory. If the victory is further killing of the Palestinians as well as the Lebanese, and also to extend his war to Iran, that means the war flames would be just around our southwestern borders. So I thought this would be number one issue in my view, which we must look at uh, and watch as to what way Trump administration goes. Unfortunately, he has some experienced people which seem to be, I was just looking at who are likely to be. Mike Pompeo, which is an old hand, could be the Secretary of State. If he comes, he has some understanding, I think good understanding of the Middle East, and maybe we might see some kind of bringing the temperatures down and finding a way out of this uh, massacre that's been going for the year or so in Gaza and now in Lebanon. But if there is some more hawk who comes around him, uh, who would play on Israeli war cabinet, warmongers cabinet actually, then I think that will be a very, very precarious situation in which the especially Middle East in particular and the world in general might find, because there'll be disruption of the oil, there'll be a whole lot of issues that might emerge. And for us as a sitting in Pakistan, I think we have to watch this because there are some security implications for us if the war really extends up to Iran and Israel really. Now they have a tit for tat shooting of rockets and missiles.
Absolutely. Now switching it over to Dr. Murtaza, what's your take on this?
Thing. Well, you see, Netanyahu has several objectives. It's not just Hamas, which he's probably depleted quite significantly because of the one-year-old war now. But then his other targets are, of course, Hezbollah, and then the biggest target is Iran, and he feels that since he's taken care of Hamas, now he should move on to these bigger targets. So that is what he'll be looking at in terms of help from Trump to convince him to allow Israel to now go after full scale against Hezbollah, and then also make greater forays into the Iranian arsenal. So this is, what will consume, the next few months on how things are going to shape up in the Middle East, and at the same time push Trump to get more Muslim countries to sign up accords with Israel. At the same time as he's, fighting all these wars in the Middle East with Hezbollah, Iran, Hamas, and to a certain extent Houthis, get more and more Muslim states onto his side, and basically reshape the Middle East forever. Those are his grandiose plans and vision. And it remains to be seen, to what extent, Trump would be willing to go by with all those agenda points, because he himself doesn't have those huge interests in foreign issues. He doesn't like to be, see the U.S. involved in, wars. So in some ways, there will be a bit of a conflict between even him and Netanyahu. And then on China, obviously, he would like to, link up with his old traditional allies like India, with the other rim countries in Asia, South Korea, Indonesia, all of which have some degree of animosity with China and Australia, etc. And try to craft an alliance against him, and somehow break the China and Russia relationship that had developed over the last 4 years, given the fact that Biden was not interested in any kind of engagement with Putin. So all of those things, may see some shift with Trump in power, and we must also understand that this is a Trump who is 4 years older than he was in his last term, and already on on the campaign trail, he did exhibit more and more signs of mental disarray, of confusion. So in a sense, the turbulence that will emerge from his personality and just given, the way the global situation is, so it's going to be, a fairly turbulent, unpredictable situation that is going to unfold in the coming months and years.
A very interesting point, and that basically concludes our session on Trump and the world that's going to be closely observing him. A huge thank you to Dr. Niaz Murtaza, the political analyst who's joined us on Skype, as well as Jer Baloj, former ambassador who joined us on Skype as well. It is a great, interesting situation that's going down in history as we speak. But moving towards our second segment, we're shifting towards our own backyard here in Pakistan, specifically Lahore, with the worsening air crisis as the city is dealing with the global air quality index yet again. And this is hazardous levels that are exceeding 800. The smog has brought life to a standstill, and it's forcing schools to shut down and basically shift to online classes. 50% of the public and private sector jobs and offices are being switched to work from home, and that's a little bit tough. So we are going to be tackling this alarming public health issue and diving right into the discussion. I'd like to switch it over to Faisal and really understand what is the implication of all of this? What is going to happen if we don't tackle this hands-on?
Naila, in the start you said we need to go to our backyard. I think we need to go to backyard of Lahore as well. And in the backyard of Lahore, we have a country called India, and India has a lot to do with whatever is going on in Lahore as well, because it's only 30 miles. Farooq, it's 30 miles away. The border is 30 miles away, and if we, look at the kind of industrialization of the other side, it is more worst than this side, the Pakistan side, and it's a sort of condition or situation in which we can't separate. The borders are only separating the land, but they are not separating the air. So whatever the emissions they are contributing towards, of course it ends up in Delhi, in Lahore, everywhere. And yes, in Pakistan the work has been done. I'm not saying that nothing has been done to, of course, control these emissions, but of course when it comes to the farmers, they have been playing a positive role as well in recent times, because they've been trained by the agriculture sector of Pakistan. And yes, there are industrial sectors as well. There are few that might still under the nose, they might be doing something that is contributing towards it. But overall, I think there are certain other issues that needs to be looked after, and that is the greener sources of energy we need to adopt in city like Lahore, where of course we know that all of these chingchis and rickshaws, and if we take their emissions, they create an havoc as well. I'm not against all of them to earn their living, but there are smarter ways to live in a city in these kind of conditions.
If I may interject just a second, I'd just like to point out that there are various anti-smog operations, and in the past 24 hours, 7 people have been arrested, registering 19 cases, finding 382 people in just the past 24 hours. So there is work being done, which is a great initiative by the government of Pakistan and the government of the Punjab as well.
Well, the ones who were doing it under the nose, they've been caught maybe. So probably I think this needs to be hailed. Punjab government is playing its positive role, and that's how it should be, especially related to people who are getting affected. Their eyes are getting affected, their throats, and ENT is getting very busy up there. So government is obviously providing with all it has to, of course, control the damage. But for the future, of course, there are certain more steps that needs to be taken. Greener energy needs to be further endorsed and implemented, and especially in these kind of weathers, none of the other energy should be allowed to get out.
Absolutely, and I'd just like to add one more thing to this, that the winds carrying the smog from India are not just affecting Lahore, they're affecting Gujranwala, they're affecting Faisalabad, and they're affecting Multan the most. So it is an imperative issue that needs to be addressed. And I'd just like to come back to the specific steps or the effective ways that maybe might benefit the students. How do you see the students being affected by the shift from, you know, face-to-face classes at school or in universities or colleges that are now shifted to the online platform?
Farooq.
Of course. Farooq, would you like to add?
Okay. Regarding, first of all, I just have to correct you. You call Lahore Pakistan's backyard. Lahore is and has always been called Pakistan's heart. And not only that, I have always been in love with that city. In our country, of course, that is one of the cities that I have fallen in love with and have been for quite some time. But in India also, a city is suffering that I fell in love with somewhere around 13 years ago, that is called Delhi. Pollution is also really creating havoc there also. Regarding students, what you asked, I think that it is safe than sorry, better safe than sorry, right? It's better to actually ask kids to join remotely. But here's the thing, we know pandemic, we know our education process and system. I don't think our teachers are ready to carry out teaching through distant means. So what happens is, I know it from my own experience, that during pandemic my children's education really suffered. Unfortunately, usually what you should have is more options. Unfortunately, Pakistan and India have created an environment where they don't seem to have any options but to stop more pollution.
All right.
And unfortunately, that's the time that we have got.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely. So tonight we've tackled two pivotal stories: Donald Trump's return as president-elect, which is signaling, you know, the potential shifts in the international politics, and Lahore's worsening situation regarding the smog, and it's causing a dire public health emergency. Both are basically highlighting how the leadership, whether on the global stage or at home, are profoundly dealing with the impacts of our future. So as the world braces for change, one thing remains crystal clear. It's the proactive governance and the informed citizens who are a part of this crucial movement to move further and further in the future of our society and the global arena and politics at hand. A huge thank you to our senior analysts and our wonderful guests for joining us, not just on Skype, but also in the studio. And that was The Debate. This is Naila Shuja. Take care.